What if I told you that the hidden teachings of Jesus and all the mysteries of the universe and human nature are revealed in one sacred manuscript called the Gospel of Thomas? Banned from the Bible and labeled as heresy, the Gospel of Thomas has been buried deep in the lands of Egypt for nearly 2,000 years. Discovered only at the end of the last century, the writings still excite scholars today and create passionate debates about their origins, the author, and most importantly, about the deep meaning they carry within them. So, what exactly are these hidden teachings of Jesus? Why was the Gospel of Thomas banned from the Bible? And what is the truth about the nature of human civilization? We will reveal the answers in this new episode of Secret Origins. Welcome! The idea of the divine has accompanied human history from the very beginning. Over the millennia, this ideology has undergone a number of modifications, where today we know the divine as part of the teachings of monotheistic religions such as Christianity. The sacred book representing this belief system and history is the Bible, the Holy Writ of God. But do we really have the knowledge and understanding of the religious texts in front of which we have been baptized, in the way they were meant to be presented to mankind?
As for the one who seeks, let him continue to seek until he finds. When he finds, he will become agitated. When he becomes agitated, he will be astounded, and he will reign over the all.
The Gospel of Thomas was found in December 1945 near the town of Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt, where villagers, quite by chance, found a canister of papyrus manuscripts. The discovery occurred about 10 kilometers northeast of the Nile Bridge in Nag Hammadi, near Jebel et Tarif Hill. The villagers who discovered the manuscript did not initially understand the significance of their find. After a while, the Egyptian government intervened, and most of the manuscripts were collected and placed in the Coptic Museum in Cairo. Thus, these papyri, representing cultural heritage, were preserved for study and public access. They are identified by some researchers as one of the oldest early Christian or Gnostic texts, while others believe they were written later. Expectedly or not, the content of the 52 treatises found at Nag Hammadi, Egypt, in many ways matches or overlaps with material in the canonical Gospels and Bible. According to scholars, about 80% of the material is similar. Despite their enormous importance, however, the texts were left out of the pages of the Bible because of the heretical messages contained in them, which, in all likelihood, accounted for the remaining 20% that changed the understanding of religion entirely. Many scholars and esotericists defend the theory that the Gospels banned by the Church present Jesus differently, with his human strengths and weaknesses, which is unacceptable because of the deification inherent in the altered texts of Christian doctrine. The canonical writings emphasize only his good qualities and personality, attributing to him words and deeds that cannot be said to have been part of his story and essence. Researchers suggest that the collection of apocryphal texts was buried centuries ago in response to a decree by Bishop Athanasius, who defined the strict canon of Christian writings. These texts, thought to be the works of Gnostic writers, contain thoughts that diverge from canonical views. Dated from 60 to 250 CE, they represent an intriguing piece of early Christian literature. The Nag Hammadi collection, the work of followers of early Christianity and Gnosticism, differs from other apocryphal texts. The Gospel of Thomas, found with the other papyri, may not even be part of the collection because of its different structure and content. Some scholars date the Gospel of Thomas to around 340 CE, significantly later than the other texts found. After the discovery of the Gospel of Thomas in 1945, scholars determined that 3 Greek fragments, known as the Oxyrhynchus papyri, were actually part of it.
Greek papyri fragments with the sayings of Jesus. Some of the sayings were familiar to readers of the Bible at the time, but 4 other sayings weren't included in the Bible and had never been seen before until that day.
These fragments are believed to have been written between 130 and 250 AD. There are hypotheses that the earliest portions of the Gospel of Thomas containing teachings of Christ may date to the 60s AD, while others suggest that they were written around 100 to 110 AD. Controversy over the time of the writing of the Gospel of Thomas and whether it is an early Christian text or a product of the flowering of Gnosticism continues to this day. Origen, an early Christian theologian and philosopher, referred to the Gospel of Thomas as apocryphal and unorthodox. Some scholars believe that the Gospel of Thomas is a precursor to the Gospel of John, while others argue the opposite, that the Gospel of Thomas was written after that of John. In the Gospel of John, the Apostle Thomas is presented as a doubter, hence the expression, Thomas the Unbeliever. One of the main differences between the canonical writings and the Gospel of Thomas is the way in which the question of the kingdom of God is treated. The Gospel of Thomas argues that the kingdom has already come for those who understand the message of Jesus, and that the kingdom of God is not an end goal, but a state of transformed consciousness leading to deeper self-knowledge. While historians and critics debate the authenticity of the divine texts, a slightly different view of them proves that no matter how distorted they are in today's holy books, they reveal knowledge about human nature and origins that science is only proving in our day. The Gospel of Thomas is one of the Gospels not included in the New Testament and is part of the Nag Hammadi library, as the texts found in the clay pot are called. It contains 114 sayings, each beginning with the introduction, Jesus said. However, some of these sayings are contrary to Jewish tradition. The apostles Peter and Matthew, for example, are described as unable to understand the true meaning of the work and words of Christ. And such descriptions are unacceptable to canonical understandings, where all the apostles are absolutized as faithful followers and successors of Christ's teachings. According to modern scholars, the Apostle Thomas is not the true author of the Gospel. Who actually wrote it remains a mystery to this day. It is even suspected that the author was not actually a single person, but several different disciples of Thomas. The term Judas Thomas the Twin literally translated means Didymus Judas Thomas. The word Didymus in Greek and Thomas in Aramaic or Syriac mean twin. One of the papyri mentions Judas, who is also known as Thomas. In the New Testament texts and early Christian works, references are made to Judas, the brother of Jesus, and to the Apostle Thomas. According to traditions in Syria, Judas Thomas was considered the twin brother of Jesus, making him a particularly important figure associated with his teachings. More important than the origins and the author, however, remain the messages collected in the Gospels. Translated into English in 1959, it has aroused considerable interest among scholars and theologians. The impact of this document manages to transcend any knowledge we have and still poses questions that the greatest modern minds have failed to answer. In these works, Yeshua, also known as Jesus, is presented as a being seeking to awaken our conscious presence. This is reflected in a passage of John's Gospel, where Jesus says, "Where I am, I want you to be. The Spirit my Father gave me, I have given to you. I am in you, and you are in me." In this, Jesus, like the wise men of the East, uses paradoxical aphorisms to urge us to realize our true origin, our infinite freedom, even in the face of the most difficult and unexpected circumstances. In this way, he urges humanity to awaken with a new insight into absolute reality, revealing it not elsewhere, but within ourselves. And when the disciples came to him, they said to him, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" And he answered and said unto them, "Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, and it is not given unto them. For he that hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have abundance. And he that hath not, even that which he hath shall be taken away from him. Therefore speak I unto them in parables, for they look and see not, and they hear and hear not, neither understand." Matthew chapter 13, verses 10 to 13. With the same message, we encounter the words of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas. Yeshua said, "Whoever has something in hand will be given more. Whoever has nothing, even the little they have, will be taken away." With the power of its words, this text has a profound effect on many. awakening in them an unknown but undoubtedly true sense of the truth and reality in which we live. But why has the Gospel of Thomas been declared as a Gnostic text? In this key documentation discovered, scholars and theologians have identified a key aspect that unites the Nag Hammadi texts: the concept of Gnosticism. This term signifies something deeply significant in the context of all spiritual traditions around the world and has great relevance for our understanding of human life. Gnosticism refers to religious beliefs and practices that were current in the early centuries of the Christian era. These teachings were condemned as heresies, especially by Bishop Irenaeus of Lyons, one of the Church Fathers and a bishop of Lugdunum, Gaul, who lived in the 2nd century. This condemnation led to the mass suppression of Gnostic ideas and the ruthless destruction of related texts. Until the discoveries at Nag Hammadi, much of our knowledge of Gnostic teachings was based on the views of Irenaeus, which presented these teachings as a threat to religion. Now, almost 2 millennia after the suppression of these so-called heresies, we have the opportunity to peer directly into the heart of their teachings and examine them from a new and more objective angle. But while the Nag Hammadi texts can finally be read directly for the first time in 2 millennia, truly appreciating them requires more than simply reading ancient scrolls or modern translations. It requires deep intellectual and spiritual immersion. The importance of this point is emphasized in the first words of Jesus, called Yeshua in Aramaic, in these texts. Whoever lives the interpretation of these words will no longer taste death. These words beg the question of whether we are talking about figurative meaning or about knowledge and understanding that transform human nature itself, transcending mere knowledge or insight. This kind of knowledge is inextricably linked to the workings of faith, seen not as a collection of emotional beliefs, but as an inner movement in the human psyche that creates a kind of magnetic flow between individual human life and the source of life. The knowledge thus described leads us to ask the question, is there any kind of cognition that can transform our being to the point where we view ourselves as information that does not disappear when the body dies? Our civilization and personal lives are faced with the problem that knowledge evolves rapidly, but it does not lead to a corresponding evolution of our being. This creates complex problems and can be said to take more than it gives. The full development of the human mind, including the intuition of objective value, is necessary to see the world as it is and to act in the service of the good. Jean-Yves Leloup, the author of the book, approaches the Gospel of Thomas not as a commentary, but as a meditation arising from the tilled ground of our silence. He distinguishes between 2 kinds of knowledge: the habitual, formed through reading and the thoughts of others, and the deeper, which arises from self-knowledge and the living Father within us. In this context, Gnosticism contains other doctrines that are related to it, such as the metaphysical dualism expressed and the criticism of the material world. But the basic idea of Gnosis as a transformative knowledge is of utmost importance and calls for a deeper exploration of the world in which we live, a world deeply affected by the gap between mental knowledge and the knowledge of the soul. This deeper knowledge, which Leloup calls pure consciousness or the pure energy of consciousness, is much more than mere thought. This energy can transform all our functions, including thinking, and make us a fully developed human being called anthropos, an awakened human being. Similar views are found in many other teachings, one of which is Neoplatonism, which has influenced and been influenced by the Christian religion. Therefore, this book, like Jean-Yves Leloup's other presentations, for example on the Gospel of Philemon and the Gospel of Mary, which are also Gnostic texts, represents a step towards the revival of the mind that our age desperately needs. The mind must function on 2 levels, the level of silence and the level of expression, with expression being a consequence of silence, says Leloup. Only the mind that has been nourished by the silence of pure being can properly guide human life. The ordinary isolated intellect, no matter how brilliant or inspired, does not possess the energy necessary to govern our thoughts, words, impulses, and experiences in a way that is consistent with the truth and the good. Science has brought us phenomenal discoveries, but if we've forgotten that the mind alone can guide neither itself nor us, these discoveries will lead to ruin. True energy must come from a higher level in the human psyche, a level that is experienced as silence. Whether we call it Gnosticism, esotericism, or mysticism, spiritual work involves energy, not just thought. Gnosis is a force, not just a set of ideas or symbols. Academicism, dogmatism, or fanaticism are dangers that arise when we convey our teachings in words alone. As for the rather convoluted question of the origins of Gnosticism, the Nag Hammadi find does not provide a definitive and indisputable answer. However, strong evidence suggests that Gnosticism arose before the spread of Christianity. This truth is revealed through the analysis of the so-called Scythian group of texts, which represents a goldmine for the study of Gnosticism. Investigation of these texts has revealed an exciting new form of Gnostic doctrine, with links to Valentinianism, a mystical current intertwined with Christianity and Neoplatonic philosophy. This discovery leads us to an enigmatic pre-Christian current of thought that traveled the path of Gnosis and at some point met and collided with Christian thought without neglecting the influence of Neoplatonic wisdom. Gnosticism or not, esotericism or religion, the fact is that the texts of the Gospel of Thomas present a new version of Jesus to society. He is not presented as the Son of God, but as a man, a teacher whose message to the world is that all people can be like him. Yeshua said, "Whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me, and I will become them, and what was hidden from them will be revealed." In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus is described in a unique way, different from his presentation in the other Gospels, especially those of the New Testament. In it, Jesus does not engage in miraculous healings, does not affirm the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies, does not preach about the establishment of an apocalyptic kingdom changing the world order, and does not die for the sins of humanity. Instead, in this text, Jesus is portrayed as a teacher who draws knowledge from an infinite fountain of wisdom, rejects the importance of prophecy and its fulfillment, criticizes the concepts of the end of the world and apocalyptic predictions, and points the way to salvation through acquaintance with the teachings of the living Jesus. Yeshua reminds his followers of their divine origin and shows them that the soul can find freedom even in the material world, but only through realization and gnosis. He teaches that the lack of freedom is tantamount to exile, ignorance of the origin and nature of one's own soul. In the context of the dualism between spirit and matter, light and darkness, good and evil, exile becomes a symbol of spiritual deprivation. Although the soul belongs to the spiritual world of light, in the material world, it finds itself trapped in darkness, needing a saving knowledge in order to realize itself. This knowledge removes the separation between the knower and the known, allowing the individual to feel oneness with the universe and to discover the path to salvation. The value of the Gospel of Thomas as a source of Jesus' teachings is underscored by the fact that it contains sayings of Jesus that are not included in the New Testament and were unknown before his discovery. An example of this is the parable of the dish and the flour, which illustrates the difficult nature of the kingdom of God. Yeshua said, "The kingdom of the Father is like the woman who carried a jar of flour. After she walked a long way, the handle of the jar broke, and the flour began to spill behind her along the road. Heedless, she noticed nothing. When she arrived, she set down the jar and found it empty." The idea of the divine being part of ourselves is embedded in many other philosophies, one of which is Kabbalah, Hermetism, and Neoplatonism, according to which man, whose soul has a divine spark, must try to return from the sensible world to the supersensible world in order to reunite his divine soul with God. Not only does our understanding of our essence as a species overlap, but also many other views, such as the principle of gender, for example, mentioned as the seventh principle in Hermetism. It states that gender is in everything and everything possesses its own feminine or masculine principle, each of which is a degree of its opposite. Through the words of Jesus, it sounds like this. Simon Peter said to him, "Mary should leave us, for women are not worthy of the life." Yeshua answered, "This is how I will guide her, so that she becomes man. She too will become a living breath like you men. Any woman who makes herself a man will enter into the kingdom of God." The opinion that women are not worthy of life expresses a form of subordination and inadequacy of women in the spiritual context and reflects the general cultural and religious views on the role of women in society at that time. In the modern world, we observe more clearly how this gender division is undergoing changes, and each gender is altering the degree of its opposite. Jesus speaks of the transformation of Mary to become a living spirit, resembling you, men, which can be interpreted as a call for spiritual equality and overcoming gender differences in the context of spiritual enlightenment and transformation. The idea that a woman must become like a man to enter the kingdom can be seen as a symbolic expression of the need to overcome traditional gender roles and identities in achieving spiritual enlightenment. This union and transformation led to overcoming ordinary human limitations and reaching a higher state of consciousness and spirituality. The idea that every woman who makes herself a man will enter the kingdom of heaven suggests that reaching a higher state of consciousness and spirituality is not limited by gender differences, but rather depends on spiritual transformation and enlightenment. Plato expressed his opinion 2,500 years ago that knowledge without virtue does no good and reveals no truth. The modern world suffers from ideologies and attachment to ideas. Lelou asks whether it is possible to read these logics in a way that leads us to a journey of transformation, to a full awareness of our essence. This challenge and reward, the quest and gift offered by this and all truly sacred writings, is bound up with attending to our inner state, even as we seek to understand the meaning of these words. In our day, as a result of in-depth studies of the Gospel of Thomas and the text, a different paradigm in understanding Jesus is emerging. This perspective suggests that in the wise words of Jesus, one can also find a key to understanding the historical Jesus, who is presented as an itinerant teacher without an apocalyptic message, preaching parables and words of wisdom in Galilee. He makes people see a new and enriched picture of life. According to Burton Mack, author of the book The Myth of Innocence, Jesus is an expression of the cynic approach to life, characterized by a call to insight and the pursuit of otherness. Cynicism is a movement of ancient philosophers famous for their critiques of societal norms and values. Thus, the teachings of Jesus, especially as conveyed in the Gospel of Thomas, with its calls for insight, can be considered akin to the wisdom of the cynics. A relatively recent discovery also presents a similar interpretation of Jesus' being, telling of his life from a perspective not recognized by the churches. A few years ago, while arresting smugglers in southern Turkey, law enforcement discovered a stolen ancient Bible.
Now, this is quite a discovery, fragments of a biblical scroll.
The Bible is about 1,500 years old, written in Aramaic and Assyrian, and contains a thick leather cover and thin leather pages. According to experts, the relic has survived to this day thanks to special treatment of the leather. The discovery sparked concern in the Vatican because it includes the Gospel of Barnabas, excluded from the Catholic Church at the Council of Nicaea. Barnabas, a disciple of Christ originally called Joseph or Josiah, was born in Cyprus to wealthy Jewish parents of the priestly family of Levi. He preached with the Apostle Paul in many cities of Asia Minor. The Gospel was discovered in 2000 and was kept secret in the Ethnographic Museum in Ankara. Iranian religious authorities claim that the text in the book supports the theory that Jesus was not crucified and was not the Son of God, but a prophet, and that he called the Apostle Paul a deceiver. The book also claims that Jesus ascended into heaven alive without being crucified, and that Judas Iscariot was crucified in his place. Thomas, another apostle of Jesus known as the Twin, died in the city of Melipura, South India. after preaching the gospel there. In this way, Jesus can be called multifaceted in more ways than one, and his teachings, encoded in philosophical messages, present human nature in a very different way from what we are used to knowing. Can we rediscover God in ourselves through these words, and what is the nature of faith in this context? We are accustomed to knowing ourselves and the world around us through knowledge that we frame in sciences based on experiments. Instead of integrating what we learn through different methods, we put them in terms of negation. Philosophy, psychology, esotericism, physics, metaphysics, religion, and many other teachings are different views and interpretations of the same knowledge with different readings. Turning back to history, we find that the knowledge our ancestors possessed was beyond our present capacity to perceive. In this sense, the Gospel of Thomas can be seen as a scientific text, expressing knowledge of the whole through the limitation of religion, and Christian teaching as knowledge of ourselves. The God whom we seek, to whom we pray, who sends us trials of good fortune, is in fact ourselves. Hell and heaven are not final destinations. They are here, and where we will be is our own choice, because according to the Gospel of Thomas, it says the kingdom of God is within us. The essence of humanity is revealed in the expression. Yeshua said, "If they ask you where you come, say, 'We were born of the light.' There where light is born of light, it holds true and is revealed within their image. If they ask you who you are, say, 'We are its children, the beloved of the Father, the living one.' If they ask you what is the sign of the Father in you, say, 'It is movement and it is repose.'" If we turn to the Bible, we will find the relationship between us and God encoded in Genesis chapter 1 verse 27. "And God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. The image of God, and born of the light that proceeded from himself, that is us, the children of light." The word light means energy, a certain frequency. We meet energy mentioned elsewhere in Scripture. His disciples asked, "Teach us about the place where you dwell, for we must seek it." He told them, "Those who have ears, let them hear. There is light within people of light, and they shine it upon the whole world. If they do not shine it, what darkness?" The idea that we are children of light, to put it more energetically, is also embodied in the teachings of Sibelian, whose authors have remained unknown as well, and in history, we know them as the three illuminated ones. "All is mind, the world is mental," says the first Hermetic principle, apparently confirming the words of Jesus and more. The great scientist Albert Einstein also supports this theory by saying, "Everything in the world is energy. Energy is the basis of everything. If you tune into the energetic frequency of the reality you want to create for yourself, you will get exactly what your frequency is tuned into." This is not a philosophy, it's physics. And that's how religion morphs into science. Today, we can trace the progression of perceiving the world this way. If we turn to history, we find that the particles that make up matter, of which we are made and ourselves, can have the behavior of waves as well. The English scientist Thomas Young proved this in 1801 with his experiment of light passing through two slits. The conclusion of this experiment was that light has both a wave and a particle nature, and that these natures are inseparable, and that each particle is in instantaneous relation with all the others. Nikola Tesla deepened the knowledge of the workings of the universe by discovering a lighter-than-air substance, a carelessly excluded element from the Mendeleev table, the ether. Ether is seen as a continuous life-giving energy, known to ancient philosophers as a substance finer than air. In Chinese culture, it is the qi energy that governs the four basic natural forces, while for many mystics, it is a direct manifestation of the divine. Ether is described as a type of cosmic radiant energy, lines or strings of force, present in the cosmic vacuum, which is difficult to detect by the usual methods of investigation. This energy is homogeneous and isotropic, meaning that it is the same everywhere and in all directions. In his unpublished work, Man's Greatest Achievement, Serbian-American inventor Nikola Tesla outlined his dynamic theory of gravity and stated that the ether fills all space. Tesla states, "Of all the forms of nature's vast and omnipresent energy, which are in constant change and motion, just as the soul gives life to the inanimate universe, electricity and magnetism are probably the most amazing. We know that electricity acts as an incomprehensible fluid, that a constant quantity of it must exist in nature, that it can neither be created nor destroyed, and that electricity and the phenomenon of ether are identical." Tesla also states, "Electricity is everywhere in unlimited quantities, and it can set the world's machines in motion." And he adds, "All the literature on this subject is in vain and destined for oblivion. Like all attempts to explain the workings of the universe without acknowledging the existence of the ether and the necessary function it plays in phenomena." And it is precisely this oblivion that the writings of the sacred texts, revealing precisely this knowledge of man and the universe, and for which they are most probably not made available to mankind in their pure form, are sunk. As a result of having outburied God within ourselves, there have been many dark periods of slavery, wars, and limitless power in our history. Drawing from the words of Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, and Jesus himself, some might say that we are an energy created by ourselves that exists independently and eternally, inextricably linked to all that exists and to God himself, who is in fact a part of us. We are the living Father who makes choices about what reality we are to experience, and since we are in constant connection with everything else, we influence and are influenced by our surroundings through those choices. In the Gospel, this thesis can be affirmed with parables 25 and 26, which read, Yeshua said, "Love your brother and sister as your soul. Protect them as you do the apple of your eye." Yeshua says, "You see the mote in your brother's eye, but you do not see the log in your own eye. When you remove the log from your eye, then you will see clearly enough to remove the silver from your brother's eye." Since the name of the evil one or Satan is mentioned in religion as the other polarity of God, we cannot help but ask the question, if God dwells within us, then where does the devil reside? Though not mentioned in the Gospel of Thomas, the one whom many fear and whom they blame for their misfortunes and misfortunes also, to their surprise, dwells within us. From the Sanskrit translation, the word Satan is associated with what we today called ego. The ego is meant to guard our physical identity, but empowered, it can also be the reason we move away from the divine within us. In this line of thought, the so-called devil can be called our limitation to embrace our own nature, which often happens as a result of an unhealthy kind of belief in our own importance, an expression of self-importance, and a selfish drive to succeed. The ego represents the capricious child within us that wants to dominate everything and everyone. This constant desire to be above others, to be respected and recognized for something that exceeds any reasonable limit, is a manifestation of the ego. It carries with it a sense of superiority that goes hand in hand with an overconfidence that exceeds all reasonable limits of skill and talent. In other words, it is a conscious separation from all that exists, including God. But in the Gospel of Thomas, how Jesus knew the laws of the universe and brought humanity into self-knowledge is a question that has no definitive answer. In the Gospel of Thomas, we can summarize that his level of awareness of human nature was many times beyond what we, almost 2,000 years later, have. According to the Gospel of Thomas, what he left behind, however, continues to give us guidance on how to find the divine within ourselves. Yeshua saw some infants being nursed at the breast. He said to his disciples, "These nursing infants are like those who enter the kingdom." The disciples asked him, "Then shall we become as infants to enter into the kingdom?" Yeshua answered them, "When you make the two into one, when you make the inner like the outer, and the high like the low, when you make male and female into a single one, so that the male is not male and the female is not female, when you have eyes in your eyes, a hand in your hand, a foot in your foot, and an icon in your icon, then you will enter into the kingdom." Although denied and stigmatized by the churches as a Gnostic text, the Gospel of Thomas carries a message to which the modern world is turning in new ways. For those who have experienced and embraced religion through its canonical meaning, this encounter with Jesus provides a different perspective on the whole understanding of Christianity. In it, the ideas collide with the literalism of fundamental Christianity, and religion becomes a way of being rather than doctrines to be believed or sacraments to be performed. The general academic interest in Thomas lies more in its similarities with the canonical Gospels than its differences with them. Its relatively recent discovery and lack of definitive acceptance by academia makes it a subject of public doubt, and for this reason, its impact on a global scale is less significant. Our modern world is still going through the transition of division of different cultures, nationalities, religions, and all other forms of prejudice, and the thought of unity is yet to enter the minds of most people. However, the mystical understanding of Jesus still manages to excite some scholars like Elaine Pagels, a professor of religion at Princeton University. Pagels has devoted much of her life to extensive studies of early Christianity and Gnosticism. She concludes that the Gospel of Thomas is not only a Gnostic text, but expresses her doubts about the category of Gnosticism in general. She defines the Nag Hammadi texts as more of a guide to self-knowledge. Paul Smith, president of Baha'i Spiritual Assembly of Providence, expresses his view of the Gospel of Thomas, believing that the divine beyond can be deeply experienced in transcendent consciousness, which is also called formless casual consciousness. It is accessed in the spiritual knowledge of our headspace. The main theme, according to him, of the Gospel of Thomas is that everything consists of a single and indivisible reality, of which we are all a part. The Gospel of Thomas is the subject of fierce debate among scholars over its authenticity and its ability to preserve an older tradition of the historical Jesus than the Synoptic Gospels. Some scholars, such as Helmut Koester, have argued that certain sayings in the Gospel of Thomas may be as old and valuable as the Synoptic Gospels as sources for the early development of Jesus' traditions. The Gospel of Thomas has also been considered in the context of other early Christian texts and has been associated with various heresies, highlighting its controversial nature in the early Christian tradition. It is mentioned together with other Gospels, such as the Gospel of the Egyptians, Matthias and Bartholomew, and with the names of the 12 apostles, Basilides and Apelles. In the Book of the Gospel of Thomas by Simon Gathercole, it is pointed out that these texts were composed by different authors and were the sources of different heresies. The perception of all these texts is as works created by heretics in order to undermine the authenticity of the official Gospels and mislead believers. This was the general attitude of the early Christian church towards such texts, which were seen as dangerous and misleading. Despite the differences in interpretations and approaches of various scholars, the Gospel of Thomas is undeniably a relevant source for the study of early Christianity and its various traditions. However, if it is to be believed, it can completely change the concept of the Christian religion and life in general by empowering man to be God himself and to create a life with the clear awareness that he is a small part of the whole universe and the whole universe is a part of him. In this line of thought, some may view the Gospel of Thomas as a guidebook that leads them to self-discovery and rediscovery of their own possibilities and the characteristics as a species, coded as a pathway to God himself. The process of disclosing the contents of all the Nag Hammadi manuscripts has not yet been completed. This is not as straightforward, nor is it an easy process. First, it's about studying the texts in Coptic, then translating and explaining them in the own language of the researcher. Thus, the main research and translations have been done in English, French, and German. On the basis of the publication of the translated text, scholars thoroughly examine the text themselves, compare them with the rest of the religious historical material of the relevant era, and draw their conclusions. But this is an activity that has only just begun. Are we yet to discover more of the messages of Jesus? What else lies buried in the ground, hidden from the world in unknown old languages, whose interpretation will stir our minds and awaken our being? For now, we can only guess. If you like that kind of content, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Now, go watch our related videos on the screen next. Keep your minds open, and until we meet again.